日本語は上手ですね is one of the most frequent phrases you will ever hear if you move to Japan and also learn how to speak Japanese. And it's also number 5 in GAIJIN BINGO, which is what we're going to be playing today. Just the other day, another YouTuber living in Japan named MayDaySan released a music video. The name of that music video was GAIJIN BINGO, and yours truly was one of the actors in it. The song is about how foreigners in Japan are often asked the same questions over and over and over again, as if the Japanese people around them are all playing bingo. I had loads of fun making this video with all the YouTubers who show up in it, and I also thought the song was really funny, so I wanted to share with you guys my experience with some of the subjects that show up in the song. Without further ado, let's go to number 1, drinking at the hub on the weekend. Now, I don't live in Tokyo, I live in Nagano City, which is about an hour to Shinkansen ride from Tokyo, which is where the hub is. But I have been there one time. I went there for maybe one drink before going out with some of my friends one night, and I don't know, it wasn't that great. Now once again, I just went there for one drink, so I have literally no experience with this. But with that said, it's not just girls that will ask you this question. This is literally the first question that anyone in Japan is probably going to ask you. Where are you from? It's the first of basically a checklist of questions that almost every Japanese person will ever ask you when you first meet them, which means that I basically have a checklist of responses as well. That, of course, is where GAIJIN BINGO the video came from. I don't actually have any experience with this. Most of the old people in Nagano either completely ignore me, or smile at me, or, you know, want to talk to me. In fact, some of my best friends in Japan are old guys. No offense, all the old guys watching this video. Now, the truth is that this question itself is actually very rare in my experience. Most people don't ask me beforehand, can you use chopsticks? What happens is, I'm using chopsticks, and everyone around me says, man, you're amazing with chopsticks. And yeah, I think a lot of foreigners get pretty annoyed with that. Like, yeah, what's the big deal? I'm okay with chopsticks, it's not an issue. But I don't actually get annoyed at this because as a kindergarten teacher, I have a class of 30 children who are all learning to use chopsticks. And depending on the parents, a lot of them don't actually teach their kids to use chopsticks properly. So you'll see kids using chopsticks like this, or just like crossing them, or doing some things that, not only things that aren't good etiquette, but also that make it more difficult for the kids in general. And not only that, those kids end up using chopsticks that way for the rest of their lives. In fact, I was at a temple recently, and the monk there, all he talked about was using chopsticks properly, and he handed out a paper that they'd been handing out for like 40 years on how to use chopsticks properly. That was it. That's all they talked to us about at the temple. We went to visit. It was like the biggest temple in the area, in this little backwoods town, and the monk there he felt very strongly about people using chopsticks properly, because a lot of people, even in Japan, don't use chopsticks properly. So personally, I don't think it's that weird that people are surprised when a foreigner can use chopsticks properly, because most of the Japanese people around them can't. I know I said that number 5 was 日本語は上手ですね. And it's not exactly that, but I think they tie in very closely together, because usually when I say something simple in Japanese, like hello, konnichiwa, the first response from Japanese people who I've just met is usually わ、日本語は上手ですね. And often, right after that, they'll tell me how Japanese I am. This one is a little bit annoying because it feels kind of like an empty compliment. Just because I said konnichiwa does not mean I'm good at Japanese. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. Now, while in fact I am pretty good at Japanese, it doesn't mean that you know it just yet. So I can understand why people get a little bit annoyed at this one, especially when they've heard it for the 5 millionth time. In fact, it's so common that it's basically a meme now. But the thing that annoys me the most is when people say, you know more Japanese than I do. Now, hearing that after I've just said a greeting or something simple, that's even worse. That's like an empty, massive compliment, and it just basically makes me feel like the person who's speaking isn't thinking at all. And that's probably the case. They're probably not thinking at all. But it is a little frustrating. With that said, I'm usually able to just brush it off. This one was actually my part in the video, and you may have seen my visa actually show up on the screen for a little bit. But what you might not have noticed is that it's actually a 5-year visa. So I'm really happy because I don't have to go back to the immigration office for quite a while. What I found in my experience is that if you get longer contracts, so contracts longer than 1 year, you're much more likely to get a longer visa. So many people apply for a 3 or 5 year visa, but their contract is only 1 year long, or maybe they only have half a year left on your contract. And in my experience, they don't like to give you very long visas when you don't have a longer contract. My contract was actually pretty long, so even though I didn't even request a longer visa, I just got a 5-year one anyway. I'm pretty happy about that. This has actually happened to me a few times. When I first moved from the nearby town of Suzaka to Nagano, I didn't know how the whole local tax system worked. So I started getting bills in the mail from Suzaka, and I didn't understand that they were actually bills. At the time, I wasn't that great at Japanese yet, so I didn't really know what was going on, and I just let them keep building up and building up. And eventually, I realized that I owed over $1,000 in local taxes, because they actually charge for the previous year the following year. It's an annoying system, and most foreigners don't know what's going on when they first get those bills, and I know I didn't. When I actually left the country for a year, I went to the city office and made sure that I didn't have any taxes to pay. I thought it was all taken care of. They told me it was, that I was all good, nothing left to do. I was gone for 2 months, and the person at my old house, well, they got a bill in the mail for $1,600. The other annoying thing is that the various offices within city halls and prefectural halls, they don't seem to be tied together very well. I don't really get this question too often. Every once in a while when people ask me the question, why did you come to Japan? Which is probably number 2 or 3 on the list of questions that every Japanese person will ask you when you first meet them. So sometimes it will come up then. So people will sort of ask me before I'm able to respond, was it because of anime and manga or something? And then of course I just say, no, I was never really interested in those. More recently I've become a little more interested in anime and manga, but until I came to Japan and learned Japanese, I had no interest whatsoever. Oh my god, yes. This is number, 3 or 4 on the list of questions that every Japanese people is definitely going to ask you. Can you eat sushi? Can you eat natto? Can you eat sashimi? Do you like Japanese ramen? Like every single type of food that they think is very unique, they're gonna ask you about it. It doesn't really bother me so much. I just say yes, 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 yes. And then they're like, is there anything you can't eat? And there's only one. It's shirako, which is basically fish sperm. I'm not a big fan of that. I covered this one a few minutes ago, but I've been to the immigration many times. Generally, if you need to renew your visa, you will have to go to the immigration office at least twice in that year. So you'll go to put in your application, and then you'll go back to actually get your card, if you're lucky. Many times you'll have to provide further documentation, which means that you'll have to go into the office, give them that documentation, come back, and hopefully only have to go one more time to actually get your card. This past year when I finally got my 5-year visa, I actually had to go 2 or 3 times in the same day because my company kept forgetting various documentation that I needed. Oh my god. I get this question all the time. It's the most annoying question actually. This is probably the only question that legitimately gets to me and that I'm still not sure how to respond to. Cause like, my job is not teaching English now. It used to be. So basically what people were saying when they said, please teach me English is, please do your job in your free time for me for free. If you're a computer programmer and someone asks you, hey, please make me a website for free in your spare time, how are you gonna feel about that? Like nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Even now that I'm not an English teacher, I'm just a regular kindergarten teacher, I still don't feel like spending my free time teaching you English. Furthermore, when people ask me to teach them English, they don't have anything in mind that they want to learn. They don't have words or phrases or anything that they would like me to teach them on the spot. It's just like, teach me how to speak English. Anyway, yes, this one's annoying. This is one of those questions that you'll almost definitely be asked when you first meet someone here in Japan. In fact, it's probably the 3rd or 4th in line after, why did you come to Japan and where are you from? It's not that annoying, it's just a simple response, I've been here 7 years or something. Unless you've come and gone, then it's a little bit of a complicated response, but you will answer it so many times that you'll basically have your response memorized and it won't be that big of a deal. Nope, I've never had a problem with this one. Never have I ever been asked if I needed one, and I've never had to ask anyone to be it for me. Because I've almost always lived in my company's apartment buildings. My previous company required me to live in their apartment, and my current company doesn't require it, but they have one that I'm able to live in. For a little over a year, I actually lived in a house, and the person who owned it was actually just a really nice person who wanted someone to live in the house for them, so there was no contract there either. They just, gave me their bank account and I sent them money every month, and that was it. So I didn't have to do anything. Most of these are definitely things that people who live in Japan from other countries are going to have to deal with at some point. Most of these questions are questions that will be asked of you frequently if you ever move to Japan. If you'd like to learn how to respond to these questions as quickly as possible, there's a video over here that's going to get you started with that. And if you'd like to just get better and better at Japanese, why don't you hit the subscribe button? Thanks for having us in your music video, MayDaySan. If you want to check out his channel, there's a link down in the description. See you next time. Bye-bye.